It was just after 6 in the morning when I pulled into the driveway. The sky was still dark, that heavy pre-dawn kind of dark that made everything feel colder than it was. I sat in my truck for a moment, engine running, hands still gripping the steering wheel like I wasn't ready to let go. A 14-hour shift at the hospital does that to you. Makes you question whether home still feels like home or just another place to clock into a different kind of work. I rubbed my eyes, grabbed my bag, and trudged up to the porch. As soon as I pushed open the front door, something felt off. You know how you can walk into a space you know better than your own thoughts and still sense when something isn't quite right? That was me, standing in the entryway, boots still on, staring at the chair in the hallway. There was a jacket thrown over the back of it. Not mine. It wasn't just the fact that it was unfamiliar. It was the kind of jacket that said something about the man who wore it. Dark navy wool with tan suede patches at the elbows, a tailored fit. Expensive. I'd never seen it before. I sure as hell didn't own anything like it. And Sarah. She wouldn't buy that for me, not even as a joke. I hovered in the hallway longer than I should have. I walked past it, then circled back like maybe my tired brain would suddenly recognize it. But no matter how I looked at it, it didn't belong in our house. I took a deep breath, shook off the rising unease, and headed toward the kitchen. As I walked past the bathroom, another red flag hit me square in the nose. Cologne, and not mine either. This was sharper, muskier, with a kind of polished edge like the scent you'd smell in a men's fashion ad. Not the cheap kind you get at a drugstore either. This was deliberate, commanding, probably bought in one of those boutiques I always avoided in the mall. I stopped in the hallway, still half in the dark, and just stood there. That smell didn't belong in our house. It hadn't been there yesterday, or any day before. Maybe someone dropped by. Maybe she had a friend over. But at 6 in the morning, when she knew I was coming home, I shook my head. The hallway light clicked on, and there she was, Sarah. Wrapped in her gray robe, barefoot, hair a little tousled, but not messy enough to suggest she'd just woken up. She looked calm, too calm. "Hey, babe," she said with a soft smile. "You look like death warmed over. Long night?" "Yeah," I muttered, forcing myself to look away from the bathroom door. 4 ER calls in a row. Didn't sit once. I think I might be legally dead right now. She laughed, not a nervous laugh, not a guilty one. Just normal. Like nothing was out of the ordinary. Like there wasn't a man's coat draped over our chair and the scent of someone else in our bathroom. "I made coffee," she said, turning toward the kitchen. "Well, technically I made it 2 hours ago, but the pot's still warm. Want some?" I followed her to the kitchen on autopilot. I couldn't even tell if I was still tired or if the discomfort was keeping me wired. The jacket, the cologne, her face. It all blended into this weird haze I couldn't shake. She poured me a cup and slid it across the counter. Her phone buzzed on the table behind her, face down, another recent habit. "You okay?" she asked, leaning on the counter, watching me. I nodded, took a sip of the coffee even though it tasted like burnt rubber. "Yeah, just beat. Go lay down for a bit. I can rub your back later if you want," she offered, brushing her hair out of her face. I stared at her for a second longer than I should have. She looked good, almost too good for 6 a.m. Not that Sarah wasn't naturally beautiful. She always had that effortless thing going for her, but something about her felt styled. Her nails were done, her lashes curled. Her lips had that faint tint of balm that she usually only wore when she was heading out. "Did you sleep okay?" I asked. She hesitated for half a beat, just enough to clock it. "Mm-hmm. Fell asleep on the couch for a bit." I looked toward the living room. The throw blanket was folded neatly on the armrest, pillows untouched. She followed my eyes and said, "I cleaned up after I woke up. Figured I'd start the day early." Another buzz from her phone, still face down. "You expecting something?" I asked, motioning to it. She smiled without teeth. "Just some early emails. The firm's been on edge lately, new management coming in, I think." I nodded again, like I was buying any of it. But here's the thing. At that moment, I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I didn't flip the hallway chair or start sniffing around for clues. I sat down at the kitchen table, cradled the mug between my hands, and nodded like a man too tired to care. Because part of me didn't want to know. Not yet. When you love someone, your brain does this weird thing. It protects you. It rushes to make excuses, to pad the fall. Maybe it was her brother. Maybe a neighbor stopped by and used the bathroom. Maybe that cologne was from one of her coworkers dropping something off. Maybe, maybe, maybe. But even as those excuses danced through my mind, another part of me, quieter, colder, deeper, was already starting to run the numbers. The new clothes in the closet, the nights she said she was working late, the way she started hiding her phone screen whenever I walked by. She talked to me the rest of the morning like nothing was wrong. Kept the conversation light, made jokes about how I needed to stop taking night shifts or she'd forget what I looked like. She laughed, smiled, touched my arm like she always used to, and I nodded and smiled and let her, because I wasn't ready, not yet. But that jacket sat in the hallway like a loaded GN on the table, silent, dangerous and impossible to ignore. When she left later that morning to run errands, she kissed me on the forehead and said, "Get some sleep, babe. You look like you're about to collapse." I watched her walk out the door, didn't say much, just nodded again. The moment the door shut behind her, I got up and went back to the hallway. I picked up the jacket, checked the pockets. There was nothing inside. No wallet, no receipt, no business card. Just the faint scent of that same cologne. I held it in my hands for a moment and whispered to no one, "Who the hell are you?" Then I hung it back up, right where she left it. Let it sit there. A reminder, a warning, the first sign. After that morning, nothing looked the same. Sarah's smile felt slightly crooked. Her laughter had a delay to it, like she was performing it rather than feeling it. The house, which used to wrap around me like a warm blanket after every shift, now felt cold in places I couldn't explain. Corners I never used to notice. Sounds I used to ignore. That jacket stayed on the chair for another day before it disappeared. I didn't ask where it went. She didn't mention it. It vanished the way guilt does when you're practiced at hiding it quietly without a trace. The scent in the bathroom faded too. By the second morning, it was gone. No more whispers of someone else's presence lingering in the air. Still, I couldn't get that smell out of my mind. It followed me like a ghost, sneaking up on me when I was driving to work, folding laundry, or standing in the kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil. My memory had locked it in, and no amount of rationalizing would let it go. And that's when the reel began playing in my head, an endless loop of small things. Things I'd shrugged off before. Her habits, her explanations, the subtle ways she shifted. She used to leave her phone on the counter, plugged in, face up, battery always on its last leg. That changed sometime in the past few months. Now it was always fully charged, always in her hand or pocket, always face down. At first I figured she was just tired of notifications lighting it up at dinner. I even told myself it was considerate. But then I started noticing that whenever it buzzed and I was nearby, she'd either silence it instantly or get up and walk away, usually to the bathroom. Once or twice I asked about it. She said it was work stuff, private client emails, confidential deals, all perfectly plausible, until I remembered she was in HR. She didn't handle mergers or security clearances, just onboarding and disciplinary forms. I didn't say anything then. I wasn't ready to be the jealous husband digging through her inbox. But it stuck with me. Then came the gifts. At first they were small, a designer watch, a silk scarf with the tag still on, a bottle of perfume I'd never seen her wear before. She said they were corporate gifts from a vendor or part of a holiday raffle at the firm. I congratulated her, smiled even, but inside I kept wondering, since when did companies give out luxury perfume and Italian leather? One day I came home and found a new set of wine glasses in the cabinet. Hand-blown crystal, not the kind you buy at Target on a weekend whim. I asked about them. She said her department was cleaning out old event supplies. I nodded. But the boxes were still in the recycling bin, marked with a shipping label addressed directly to her name. Paid in full. It became a pattern. Sarah would bring something, home jewelry, a coat, sometimes skincare products, still sealed in branded bags, and always with a casual story attached. I never saw receipts. I never saw charges on our shared accounts. That's when it hit me. She'd opened a new credit card. I only noticed because one day while sorting the mail, I found a reward statement from a bank we didn't use. My name wasn't on it. I didn't mention it then. Just tucked it away in the drawer where I kept things I wasn't ready to deal with. And then there were Sundays. Sunday mornings used to be our thing. Slow breakfasts, long talks over coffee, sometimes a drive upstate if the weather was nice. It was the closest we ever came to breathing in sync. But slowly, they disappeared. First, she started taking early morning calls. Team strategy meetings, she said. Only time everyone's free. Then it turned into brunches. Networking, she told me. The firm's pushing internal bonding. Eventually, she just stopped explaining. She'd dress up, toss a casual, back in a few hours over her shoulder, and disappear before I finished my first cup of coffee. The strange part was, every time she left, she looked amazing. Full makeup, hairstyled, heels, dresses that hugged her body in ways that made me look twice. When I commented on it, she'd brush it off. Just trying to feel like myself again, she'd say, or, I spend all week in pantsuits, I want to enjoy my weekends. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe she was just reclaiming some confidence, rediscovering her femininity. But the woman who came back home after those outings wasn't the same one I used to have long conversations with in the morning sun. She was distracted, unreachable, like her mind was still elsewhere. Then there was the gym membership. She'd always hated gyms, said they felt performative and artificial. But out of nowhere, she signed up for one of those boutique fitness studios. Not just any gym either. The kind with eucalyptus towels and smoothie bars and motivational hashtags plastered all over the walls. She started going 4 times a week. She got new leggings, new trainers, a high-end water bottle that cost more than I made in 2 hours. I told her I was proud of her, that I was glad she was investing in herself. But deep down, I kept wondering, why now? What changed? And who exactly was she trying to impress? I tried to bring it up once, carefully, gently, without accusation. We were eating dinner, something simple she'd reheated from the night before, and I asked how she was feeling lately. She gave me a strange look. What do you mean? I don't know, I said, poking at my plate. You've been busy, like you've got a lot going on. Just wondering how you're doing. She paused, put down her fork. Are you asking if I'm okay or if I'm cheating on you? I blinked, caught off guard. What? No, I'm just asking. Because it kind of sounded like an accusation, she added, crossing her arms. I stared at her. Sarah, I just asked how you're feeling. She exhaled sharply. I'm tired, okay? Work's been a nightmare. Everyone's under pressure, and I feel like I can't do anything right. I'm trying to keep it together, but then you start asking me weird questions at dinner. I backed off, apologized, told her I didn't mean anything by it, but the way she jumped to the word cheating stuck with me. It was like she'd already been rehearsing her defense. That night when she fell asleep early, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each breath she took. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't jealous. I was awake. Finally, my gut had been whispering to me for weeks, and months, maybe, and I'd done everything I could to ignore it. But once the cracks appear, they don't seal themselves. They spread. And the more I tried to look away, the more they started to swallow everything. It was a Thursday when I found the first concrete proof. Up until that point, everything had been shadows, gut feelings, changes in tone, mornings that started late and nights that ran long. You can't confront someone with shadows. You need something solid, something that can't be rewritten with a clever excuse or a well-practiced sigh. So I started watching more carefully. Sarah didn't know the smart lock app on our front door logs every time someone enters or leaves complete with a timestamp. I'd set it up months ago after one of our neighbors got their place broken into. I'd forgotten about it myself until that night. She'd said she was staying with her friend Jenna. Girls' night, she'd called it, tossing it out casually over coffee like it was no big deal. She even made a joke about bringing face masks and wine. I smiled, said, "Have fun," and went to work. That night, during a break at the hospital, I checked the lock history. Don't ask me why, I wasn't looking for anything. Or maybe I was. Maybe I already knew. There it was, 3:41 a.m. Door unlocked. Sarah. I stared at the screen for a long time. She hadn't mentioned coming home. No text. No missed call. Just a quiet unlock in the middle of the night. The next morning I asked her about it. Not directly. I didn't want her to shut down. I said something casual like, "Did you guys stay up late?" She yawned, stretched. "So late. I didn't get to sleep until after 4." I nodded. She didn't mention the part where she left Jenna's and came home. She didn't say anything about letting herself in, changing into her pajamas, or slipping back out before sunrise. And just like that, I had my first lie documented. Still, a timestamp isn't a smoking GN. It's just a spark. I needed fire. I started digging. It started with social media, not hers, but her coworkers. People tag each other constantly, sometimes without even realizing what's in the background. I combed through dozens of posts, not looking for faces, but for reflections. And then I found one. A video posted to a story by someone from her office, just a 10-second clip of a rooftop party. Glasses clinking, people laughing. In the background, barely visible in the window's reflection, I saw her, Sarah, wearing the blue dress she told me she hadn't bought because it was too expensive. Standing beside a man, his hand was resting on her lower back. She wasn't pulling away. That moment didn't hit like a wrecking ball. It wasn't cinematic. It was quieter, colder, like ice cracking underfoot. You don't hear it until it's too late, and by then, you're already falling through. I paused the video, zoomed in, cropped, replayed, again, again, again. I didn't recognize him at first, but I had a guess. She'd mentioned her boss in passing a few times. Mark Wilson, new partner at the firm. Married, I thought. I'd seen him once at a holiday party. Handshake, smile, nice suit. Nothing memorable. Now he was the only face I could think about. That weekend, Sarah told me she was flying to Atlanta for a seminar. HR compliance conference, she said. Really boring, honestly, she added with a dramatic eye roll. But it's mandatory. Corporate wants us brushing up on legal updates. I nodded, just like always. But something inside me finally snapped. I bought a small Bluetooth tracker one of those coin-sized ones you slip into your luggage to keep from losing it at the airport. I activated it, paired it to my phone, and dropped it in the lining of her travel bag while she was in the shower. It buzzed to life on my screen, and then I waited. She left on Friday morning, flight took off, tracker pinged at the airport, all routine, but instead of Atlanta, it stopped moving somewhere unexpected downtown, near the waterfront, not near a conference center, not near the airport hotel she said the firm had booked. No, it stopped at a boutique hotel known more for its champagne brunches than corporate seminars. I watched the signal sit there. 1 hour, 2, 4. That night, I drove out there. I didn't go inside right away. I parked across the street and waited. And when the hotel restaurant opened for dinner, I walked in like any other guest. She didn't see me. She was at a table near the back, candlelight flickering against her wine glass. She was laughing, tilting her head just so, like she used to do with me. And across from her, dressed in that same kind of polished arrogance I remembered from the party, was Mark Wilson. Their hands were touching across the table. Not held, just fingertips. But it was enough. I stepped out before they noticed, back onto the sidewalk. Cold air hit me in the chest. I stood there watching the windows like they were movie screens. A few minutes later, they stood up. Walked through the lobby. Elevator doors opened, closed behind them. They never saw me. I didn't move for a long time. I think I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear through the hotel like some kind of unhinged avenger. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there like a statue with his heart carved out. Because that was the moment it all stopped being speculation. That was the moment I knew. Sarah wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She wasn't drifting or having some midlife crisis. She was cheating, deliberately, boldly, with a man who knew she was married. And worse, she was good at it. The lies had rhythm, the stories fit. The expressions matched the tone. She hadn't just fallen into something. She'd built it. She was orchestrating it. That night I didn't go home. I drove to the edge of the city, found a 24-hour diner, and sat in a booth for 2 hours without ordering a thing. My phone buzzed once. It was her. Landed safe. Long day, going to crash early. Love you. I stared at the message. It was almost poetic. She was upstairs in a hotel bed with another man, texting me goodnight. The sheer audacity made me want to laugh and vomit at the same time. I left the diner, drove home, didn't sleep. I kept replaying it in my head. Her voice, her smile, that flick of her wrist when she laughed at something he said. It was rehearsed, seamless. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was practiced, refined. By the time she came home 2 days later, suitcase rolling behind her, fake yawn on her lips, she kissed my cheek and asked, "Miss me?" I smiled, said, "Of course," because I had what I needed now. The evidence wasn't just in what I saw, it was in what she didn't say. And I knew this wasn't the time to confront her. Not yet. I needed more. After that weekend, something in me shifted. I think most people imagine the moment you confirm an affair as explosive rage, confrontation, tears, a slammed door, maybe even something broken. But that wasn't me. When I watched Sarah walk through our front door, pretending she had just returned from a corporate seminar, suitcase rolling behind her, something inside me had already gone quiet. It was like a wire snapped, not the angry kind, but the type that holds up weight for too long. One moment it's under tension, the next it's gone. And what's left behind isn't loud or dramatic, it's stillness. I made a decision that night. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I wasn't going to scream or accuse or demand a tearful confession. I was going to build a case. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to punish her at least, not at first, but because I needed truth. Tangible, objective truth. Something she couldn't twist. Something I could hold in my hand and say, "This happened." And deep down, I knew, if I gave her a single inch of doubt, she'd weaponize it. She'd deny, gaslight, cry. She'd blame stress, work, my schedule, anything but herself. So I started documenting every movement, every excuse, every lie. I created a folder on my desktop, hidden under an innocent name, Tax Documents 2022. Inside it, I stored screenshots, phone logs, and photos. I started small. The smart lock history, for one. I exported the data, labeled the entries. Sarah's comings and goings, her story versus the timestamps. I color-coded the discrepancies. Then came the receipts. Sarah wasn't great at hiding financial trails. The new credit card she'd opened, it turned out she used her birthday as the PIN. I figured it out one night while she was asleep. I quietly took her wallet from her bag, snapped a picture of the card, and added it to my files. The next morning, during a slow shift at work, I created an online account using her name and the card number. And just like that, I had access. The records read like a map of betrayal, hotel charges, some local, some in other cities, restaurants I'd never heard of. One of them had a reservation under her name and Mark Wilson's, confirmed via email. There were rideshare receipts too, dozens of them. Late-night drop-offs at luxury condos, early morning pickups a few blocks away. It didn't take long to find the pattern. The lies were mathematical, and I cataloged all of it. I bought a second tracker, this one smaller, with a longer battery life, and slipped it into the lining of the tote bag she used for work. It pinged me one evening from a restaurant downtown. I looked it up: French, upscale, the kind of place with no prices on the menu. I drove by. Sure enough, her car was parked out front. Not the office, not the gym, and certainly not a solo dinner. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. My phone logged the location. I screen captured it, time-stamped it, added it to the folder. Later that night, she came home late, hair curled, lipstick faintly smudged. She leaned over, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Long day." I had to stay for a client mediation. You know how tense those can get. I nodded. She kicked off her heels and disappeared into the shower, and I uploaded another file to the folder. After that, I bought a small camera. I didn't think I'd go that far, but it got easier once I started. a tiny motion-triggered model with no light and no sound. I placed it in the home office behind a row of books, aimed at the door, then another one angled discreetly at the living room couch. She'd started working from home a few afternoons a week, and I wanted to see what working really meant. The first few days, nothing happened. She typed on her laptop, paced while talking on speakerphone. I almost started to feel guilty. But guilt is a funny thing. It disappears the moment betrayal becomes undeniable. On the fourth day, she had a visitor. Not Mark, another man, younger, clean-cut, wearing a suit that screamed mid-level management. They sat on the couch for nearly an hour talking closely. No touching, just proximity, close proximity. Later, I checked the footage and matched the time with the door lock history. No recorded entry, meaning she disabled the tracker. She'd let him in and deleted the logs. That told me everything. This wasn't just an affair. This was an operation. I started listening more carefully, too. Her voice changed when she spoke to Mark higher pitch, softer tone, like she was adjusting herself for him. I caught fragments of their conversations when she forgot I was nearby. "You're too much," she whispered once, giggling, holding the phone to her chest like a teenager. "I'll wear it, but only if you promise to behave this time." I stood in the kitchen, fists clenched, pretending to wash dishes. Every plate I dried felt like a lie. She laughed again and said, "Okay, see you soon." I logged the time, date, and tone of the call, added it to the file. Then came the pictures. Greg, a private investigator recommended by a friend of mine in IT, took the job with little hesitation. "Discretion's my specialty," he said when we met. "What do you need?" "Proof," I told him. "No dramatics, just the truth, and lots of it." He delivered. Over the next 2 weeks, Greg sent me photos and reports. Sarah and Mark at restaurants, parking lots, side entrances to hotels. In one photo, she was leaning into his car window, smiling like she didn't have a husband at home waiting for her to come back from yoga. In another, they were walking side by side through a park, laughing. His hand was on the small of her back. They looked happy. That was the worst part. She looked happy, happier than I'd seen her in months. And all I could think about was the nights I made her dinner, the mornings I brought her coffee in bed, the anniversaries I planned, the vacations I worked overtime to afford, the little things I thought meant something. All of it replaced by someone else's smile, someone else's touch. One night I found a receipt in the trash. Room service for 2. Champagne, lobster, dessert. Her signature was at the bottom. She didn't even bother hiding it well. I flattened it out, scanned it, and filed it. The evidence was overwhelming now. I could have ended it then. I could have printed everything, laid it on the kitchen table, and waited for her to walk in. But I didn't, because that wasn't the right moment. I was waiting. Waiting for the right stage, the perfect audience, and she was about to give it to me. A week later, Sarah handed me an envelope during breakfast. She was in a rush, barely chewing her toast, already wearing the beige dress she always picked when she wanted to impress, without looking like she was trying. "There's a dinner Friday night with the firm's investors," she said, sipping her coffee. "It's a big deal. The new partners are going to be there, including Mark. They're inviting plus ones. You should come." I didn't respond right away. It wasn't the kind of invitation that felt genuine. It was transactional, strategic. Her tone was breezy, but her eyes flicked up just a little too quickly to meet mine, like she was trying to see how I'd react before deciding how to spin it. "You want me to come?" I asked casually, reaching for the envelope. She shrugged. "Yeah, of course. It'll be good for you to meet the team. Just don't wear that gray shirt you always wear. I'll help you pick something out." That told me everything I needed to know. She didn't want me there as her husband. She wanted me there as a prop, to complete the image, to keep the illusion intact. What she didn't realize, what she couldn't have imagined, was that she had just given me exactly what I needed. A public stage, a captive audience, and her guard, for once, would be down. I said yes. Over the next 3 days, I finalized everything. I refined the digital folder I'd been building, gave it a title, Disclosures. Inside it, I included the photos of her and Mark, the GPS tracker logs, the smart lock timestamps, even the hotel receipt with her signature. I formatted each piece cleanly, time-stamped, sequenced. I included the reflection photo from the rooftop party and the email confirmations for dinners she swore never happened. Each file spoke for itself. No commentary, no embellishment, just facts. The truth laid bare. The plan was simple. The restaurant was high in one of those sleek places with neutral lighting, minimalist decor, and a menu printed daily. The investors' dinner was in a private room in the back, separated from the main dining area by frosted glass panels. We arrived early, Sarah walking ahead of me like a hostess leading a tour. She looked beautiful. I hated that part. She looked like the version of her I used to adore, confident, graceful, engaging. She smiled as she introduced me to everyone, her hand lightly on my back. Just enough pressure to keep up the performance. To anyone watching, we looked like a strong, polished couple, but I knew the truth, and so did she, even if she didn't realize how much I knew. Mark arrived 10 minutes later. He was wearing a navy suit with a white pocket square and a grin I would have mistaken for charming once. Sarah's eyes lit up when she saw him. It was subtle, half a second, maybe less, but it was there. He greeted me like we were old friends, hand extended, eyes calculating. "Christopher, right?" he said, smile sharp. "Sarah's told me a lot about you." "Not everything, I hope," I said, matching his handshake. He chuckled. "Nothing bad, don't worry." Dinner began. Wine was poured. Small talk flowed. Everyone was on their best behavior, complimenting the appetizers, swapping stories about markets and mergers I barely cared about. Sarah kept leaning into Mark's jokes. Mark kept looking at her just a second too long. And all the while I sat there, smiling, nodding, waiting. Once dessert was served, a trio of miniature cheesecakes, I stood. "Sorry to interrupt," I said, raising my glass. "I know I'm not part of the firm, but I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me tonight and for taking such good care of Sarah this past year. It means a lot." Polite smiles all around. Sarah glanced at me, slightly confused. Mark gave a humble little bow in his seat. "She's a star," he said. "We're lucky to have her." I nodded. "You're absolutely right." And then I pulled out my phone. "I actually wanted to share something," I said. "It won't take long." I tapped the airdrop icon. One by one, every iPhone on that table lit up with a request. "File from Christopher, disclosures, zip." Some hesitated, others accepted automatically. Within moments, screens around the table began glowing with images. Screenshots, photos, logs, receipts, and silence. Real silence. Not the awkward kind that happens when someone says something inappropriate. This was the heavy, suffocating kind. The kind that wraps itself around a room and squeezes until no one can breathe. Mark's face changed first. The smile disappeared. He reached for his phone like he could somehow stop the file from opening. Sarah was next. Her lips parted. Her eyes locked on mine. Her face lost all color. "What? What is this?" she asked, voice cracking just enough to draw attention. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Someone gasped. Someone else muttered, "Oh my God!" A few of the investors began closing their phones, pretending not to have seen anything. But it was too late. The images had done their work. Mark leaned forward, voice low but sharp. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Just leveling the playing field," I said. "You know, for full transparency." Sarah stood up abruptly. "Christopher, we need to talk. Now." I didn't move. She leaned in, her voice trembling. "You're humiliating me." I looked at her, deadpan. "Only because you gave me something to humiliate you with." She opened her mouth and then closed it again. Across the table, one of the partners, an older woman with a platinum bob and a reputation for being ruthless, turned to Mark. "I think we'll need to have a separate meeting with HR," she said, her tone clipped. Mark tried to speak, but she raised a hand. "Not now." Sarah was frozen, one hand on the back of her chair, like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and buttoned my jacket. "I think we'll be leaving," I said calmly. No one stopped me, not even Sarah. I walked out of the room and this time, she followed. Sarah vanished for 3 days after the dinner. No texts, no calls. When she returned, her makeup was gone, and so was her pride. She confessed everything. Mark, the lies, the hotels. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I gave her conditions. Separate rooms, access to her phone, no contact with Mark, in therapy. She agreed. Her voice shook with every word. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. I just wanted control. My boundaries, my life. Months passed. Sarah kept her promises, therapy, honesty, full transparency. She told her family what she'd done, even cried in front of mine. But it didn't fix what broke. Trust once shattered doesn't return whole. Eventually, she filed for divorce. I didn't sign right away, not out of hope, but because for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. I had reclaimed my future. No more shadows, no more lies. Just me, standing in the truth, deciding where I go next.